Peugeot, the lion goes from strength to strength.
The Peugeot 309 GTI, the smart car of the class.
De nieuwe Peugeot 309 driedeurs is er al vanaf €19.945.
The reason why this is called a 309 and therefore is not in the normal Peugeot number sequence is because this car was never supposed to be a Peugeot. It was designed to be a Talbot, the Talbot Arizona. Then Talbot went bankrupt and the PSA group, their own Talbot, decided to get rid of the brand, but they had this project and therefore what we're gonna do with it. So they decided, well, let's give it a go. It was never supposed to be a replacement for the 305, which was the current small sedan that they had in stock. It was just a, let's see how it goes. What happened is that this sold much better than the 305 because the 305 was not the greatest car they had at the time. This car was born as a 5-door and with very, very humdrum engines, 1.1s, 1.3s. And then they thought, hang on, we got the 1.9 from the 205 GTI, let's see what happens. And the GTI was born. They've done a very small run of the 16 valve version as well, which was never done in right-hand drive as far as I remember. Before that, before the Talbot Arizona, this was actually a Peugeot design, a very futuristic one. It was a studio design to see how they could produce a small sedan with a very low drag coefficient, and they managed to achieve 0.22 with the prototype, which had solid wheels and very low profile body panels to cover the wheels partially, sort of a Citroen kind of vibe. But then obviously it was just a studio design, it was never produced. Now the 309s in right and drive were built in Coventry in England, and they have a Talbot VIN. So this one doesn't have a Peugeot VIN, it's got a Talbot VIN that starts in SDB. Obviously they were built in France for the French market, they were built in Spain briefly, and then once production ended globally, the 309 lived in India for like 5 years as just a base model, 5-door. And then after that in 1998, they just stopped doing it as well. The 309 at the time was the only Peugeot not designed by Pininfarina. The whole rest of the lineup was designed by Pininfarina. Obviously you can tell because they're very revered cars. This one was not, and people call the look of this awkward or challenging, but I personally think it's better than the 205. And the rubber spoiler at the back is quintessentially 80s. It's, you know, it reminds of Porsche, it reminds of the Renault Fuego. So there's a lot of 80ness in this car, which was essentially designed in the 70s originally. Compared to the 205, the boot capacity is enormous. It easily takes luggage for a family of the 90s, which didn't need much, not like the families of today. Obviously, the doors are really, really long, so access to the car is really practical. This is a very long door for such a small car. And obviously one of my favorite things is the cassette loader. It's a 6 cassette loader, which so far I only seen in this car and a few Carreras. So that makes it special. It took me forever to source an original radio. Doesn't work, but I sourced it. You can't listen to the music anyway in this car because the speakers are terrible and the car is noisy, but the look is what I care about.
This is the new Peugeot 309 GTI. It's capable of 0 to 60 in only 7.8 seconds. You're about to find out just how that feels. Peugeot 309 GTI. Action, not words.
I had the car for 6 years. I bought it in January 2018. I found it by chance and I asked my brother for some money to buy it because at the time I was fresh in the country, so you know, I didn't have that much money, but I couldn't miss it because I always wanted a 309, and so I saw it, bought it, and then I started fixing it and I haven't finished yet. 205 year best hatchback ever. It's not. The 309 is a far superior car than the 205, but there were a lot less of them. And also the 309 was never supposed to exist. So the fact that it does exist, it's beautiful. It makes it more special. Well, when I got the car, the owner before me is a very knowledgeable Peugeot person, but he's also a bit agriculture in his approach to mechanicals and electronics. So some things were not fantastic on the car, but I knew already that's the nature of it. So I spent years fixing the electrics and fixing the interior especially, which I've done mostly during the big lockdown. And getting parts obviously is always fun. I try to use the car as often as I can. I don't particularly mind if it gets wet. It's okay. Once upon a time I did, but now it's fine. It's a fun car in the wet. I have my own car club called Fine Driving, and I use the car for the club drives, and then sometimes we just take the car with the family, go for a cafe, you know, down in the peninsula. Just, you know, it's a very usable family car. It's just two of us and the dog, but still. And I haven't been on holiday with the car yet. I was supposed to when I got it, and then it broke down obviously. But yeah, adventures, every drive is an adventure because you have to listen for the car. I only went back home in a tow truck once so far, so that's not too bad. And it was my fault because I was reassembling the front brakes, and clearly there's something wrong and one of the calipers dislodged. So all in all, not too bad. Well, I'm going through a conundrum, which is, do I want to respray the car or do I want to keep it original? Some of my friends said you have to respray, some keep it original. I don't know. Obviously respray is expensive. It's always, that's the biggest thing. The interior needs some work still, but you know, French plastics are challenging to keep alive. But apart from that, the engine eventually will get a rebuild. It doesn't need it now. It's just for peace of mind. I might get it rebuilt in 2 or 3 years, but it still pulls really well. And I will raise the rear, which is the height on these cars is adjustable, and it got lowered because these cars are very oversteery by nature, so lowering the back gives a more compliant drive. But I really don't mind an oversteery car, so I'm going to raise the back again, change the suspensions, which I already ordered, they're coming. So I'm going to have new shocks, new bushes, and that's pretty much all he needs at the moment. There's some noise because the shocks are still the original ones. When I got the car, I bought a car as roadworthy ready, and it obviously wasn't. I had to do the brakes and quite a few other odd things that were necessary. And then during the big lockdown, I thought, I'll give it a go at the interior. And the oddest thing, the biggest thing I found is the driver's seat was not mounted on the chassis. Well, it was, but one of the bolts wasn't because the chassis was missing. Someone cut it. So there was a rag with a nut glued onto it, and the seat was bolted into the nut, into the rug. So during lockdown, I rebuilt the missing part of the chassis out of fiberglass and wood to give it some, good stability. And now the seat is sitting on 4 proper nuts. And then recently I had the car graphene coated with the IGL product that we use at work. So the quality of the paintwork is now a lot better. The car got also cut and polished and all of that. I haven't done that because I'm not competent enough. I got my detailer to do it. And that makes the car look a lot better. I got the wheels refurbished by Advanced Alloys in Moorabbin. They've done a great job and they look incredible now, as they should. That's pretty much it. Apart from the roadworthy item, it didn't cost me much in major things for now. Hopefully it keeps going like that. So the interesting thing about this car is the story of it. I've managed to get in touch with the original owner that bought it in 1988. Through Facebook, I wrote to every single person with that name, and I thought, okay, did you had a grey Peugeot 309 back in 1988? Someone replied, no, it wasn't me. And one person replied and said, yes, it was me. How come? And I said, well, would you believe the car is in Australia with me? And he goes, I'll tell you something interesting about the car. I thought, okay. So the car was written off 2 weeks after he bought it. Apparently, he was a bit, he liked whiskey, rolled the car, wrote it off, didn't have insurance. So how'd you get out of this? He got a shell, a brand new shell, and put every single bit of it, of the destroyed car, back in the new shell. So he had to do a bit of a VIN job, but now it's all forgotten. Obviously, it's been 36 years. So then he left England. This is an English car, obviously, and he went to New Zealand. He changed his life. He's now a very charitable man. He's done a lot of good for poor people in Africa. But for his own admission, when he was young, he was a bit different, let's say. But anyway, we're now in touch, and he likes the photos of the cars that I put on Facebook, and he told me clearly that he hated this car. He's not a car guy. Then the car was sold to a car yard. I have all the receipts in the back, obviously, and then it got bought out by a couple, and he's of French origin, and she's Aussie. And they had the car in London for many years, and then in 2002 they moved back to Australia, and they loved the car so much they decided to take it with them. So the car arrived here. I have again all the documents, the shipping documents. The ship that brought the car here, it's actually still in service. Then they used the car for a little while, but they live in Woodend, they work in the city. Car was not practical. I think in the meantime the car was also in an accident. The paint says so. And there's an enthusiast in the Peugeot club called Graham. He races a 309 GTI, a phase 2 car, and he bought this as a spare car, as a donor car basically. but then look at it and thought, oh, okay, this is probably a bit too good to become, you know, an organ donor. So he used the car a fair bit. He's done some carcanas, managed to put the wheels in a bad shape, but that's, you know, that's what happens. And then I was a Motor Classica back in 2015, and so his blue car, the 309 Phase 2, and I put a photo online, and he replied on the Facebook group on the Peugeot Car Club of Victoria, said, hey, that's my car, I got one for sale. And I thought I would never be able to afford that because I was fresh off the boat. But I decided, oh, let's have a look. So it was just after Christmas. I stopped to have a look at the car, didn't even drive it. I just loved it. And he said, make me an offer. I want to get rid of it. So days later, I made him an offer, which I thought he would never take because it was literally all I had and it wasn't much. And he said, yeah, it's yours. I'll bring it to you. And that's what happened. And then from them, I spent 6 times as much to bring it to the conditions that it is now. And obviously there's still a lot to do, but you know, it's my car. I got offered many times to sell it, and it's not going to happen. Like, you can offer whatever you like. This is my car. They are. So this is the whole lineup of Peugeot in England in 1988, and this is the 309 brochure, same year. So this is all dealership stuff. So obviously it was a very, very vast array, and interesting enough, the 309 on show is same as this one, Winchester grey. Not the most common color, makes it even more special. I think that's the best color. That's the color I would have it into, and yeah, lucky enough to do so. And obviously the 305, which you don't see many around, not even in Europe, because again, was a bit old already. 405, that will probably be my next purchase. 505, very popular car in Australia, very popular. I think they were built here for a little while, and it's just extremely reliable and comfy car. The wagon is an 8-seater. I mean, this is just perfect. It's a bit windy here. And obviously all the dealership accessories. I wish I have none, but I wish I had a set of roof bars for this. And then this was the V309. Apologies. Obviously this is a time where manufacturers were actually spending money on brochures, not like today. As you can see, the base model 309 was really nothing wow, but they were popular. One of my very first memories about a car is the director of my school when I was in primary had a white 5-door diesel 309, and for some reason I was attracted by the car. So go figure. The interior obviously was, you know, very 80s, very French. So we're talking hard plastic, and you know, they can do a lot of things, the French. The interior maybe not that. Well, apart from this one, obviously. So this is the whole story. So it's interesting how brochures once upon a time gave you a full story because they thought people would read it. Brochures today are just, you know, showing fancy shots of the cars in cool locations, but there's no story behind it because people don't have the time or the will to read any of that, or they might not even understand what they're reading. So this is from a very, very different time in history, which I regret. Well, not regret, I wasn't born yet, but it's a shame that I wasn't there. The car is obviously the same age as me. French cars of this era, and let's say up to 2001, were absolutely world-class cars, probably the best you could buy. Then everything went really wrong, but before that they were classy, they were fast, they were comfy, they had good build quality, and they were quirky in style. Then after 2001 something went really wrong clearly, and they pretty much lost all their appeal. The best thing about a car like this is because it's an old hot hatch, people don't expect it to be very fast. You know, we live in a country where everyone needs a big flashy car with a lot of noise, and then they're not really that fast because they weigh 1,000,000 kilos, and then you just engage a little bit of on a windy road, you can surprise them very much with a car like this, which is very light and fairly powerful. And even if I sell mostly Porsches, which are wonderful machines, this is a bit more me. It's an oddball. It's the equivalent of a Porsche 924, for example. People don't really love them, but if you know them, then you do love them. Let's see. Thanks. So that's a factory option. Well, not an option, it's actually a factory thing. My name is Georgio, please call me George. You can find me on Instagram as the guy with the 309 GTI, completely self-explanatory, and that's what I drive, 1988 Peugeot 309 GTI 8 valve. Painted by a miniature soldier specialist because it was all faded. So this guy does miniature soldiers, and he said, "Oh, I can do it." I mean, looks new. I was very happy about it.